The boiler room under Aurora Dynamics sounded like it was breathing. Pipes hissed. Metal ticked as it cooled. Somewhere above the building exhaled through vents. Aaron Miller lay on his back under a rust-stained tank shoulders wedged between a tangle of pipes. A flashlight rested on his chest and painted shaky rings of light across valve handles and bolts. His fingers were slick with grease and the tang of old metal clung to the air. "Hand me the half-inch," he said. A small hand appeared at the edge of his vision, holding out a socket wrench. Ruby's sneakers swung where she sat on an overturned paint bucket. "This one?" she asked. "That one." He took it and worked it around a stubborn nut. "What is rule number 1 again?" "Assume everything is hot until proven innocent," Ruby said, "especially if it looks boring." He smiled at the underside of the boiler. "Good. Boring things are the ones that hurt you when you are not looking." Steam puffed from a crack where 2 pipes met. It smelled faintly like iron and soap. On a shelf in the corner, a 12-inch television hummed. The picture was grainy and a little green around the edges. A reporter stood in front of an old photograph of a glass tower and smoke. "Today marks 20 years since the Hale Tower fire," the voice said. "One of the most devastating commercial fires in Denver history. 12 people lost their lives, including Captain Thomas Miller, a veteran firefighter who—" Aaron reached up without looking and clicked the television off. The sudden silence was thick. Only the hiss of the boiler and the faint vibration of machinery remained. Ruby glanced over her shoulder and then back at him. She did not ask why. He tightened the nut, wiped his hands on a rag, and slid out from under the tank. Dust and cobweb threads clung to his hair. Ruby giggled and reached up to pluck one from his ear. "You have spider webs growing on you now," she said. "Maybe you should live down here." "Tempting," he said. "Rent is cheaper." She wrinkled her nose, but no windows. He looked toward the small high window on the far wall. It showed a strip of dirty light, and today gray clouds pressing low over Denver. "Windows are overrated," he said. "They only make you want things you cannot afford." Ruby opened the notebook she carried everywhere and pulled a pencil from behind her ear. On the top page was a drawing in progress. Squared shapes, arrows, labels in uneven handwriting. "Show me the way the water goes again," she said. He crouched beside her. From the main line here, he tapped the sketch into the boiler, then it splits. One to the radiators, one to the taps. Pressure valve here so it does not blow your eyebrows off. "My eyebrows are my best feature," she said. "Exactly why we protect them." She drew a tiny pair of eyebrows next to the pressure valve label and grinned. The overhead light buzzed and flickered once. Aaron glanced up, then went back to the drawing. The door at the top of the stairs opened. A man in a blazer leaned in, blinking at the change in light and temperature. "Maintenance," he called. "That is us," Aaron said. "Bibi and Diggy." There is a flickering light on 23, the marketing floor. He seemed reluctant to step fully into the boiler room. His polished shoes hovered near the threshold. "I will check it on my way up," Aaron said. Adam said. "Soon would be good. It is driving my team crazy." The door closed again without a thank you. Footsteps retreated. Ruby made a face at the stairs. He did not even say please. "Some people think there is a please sign built into the uniform," Aaron said. "Invisible ink." She considered that, then nodded slowly. He stood stretched and hung the wrench back on a pegboard crowded with tools. The labels were handwritten neat and small. On a hook beside the board hung a dull silver tag on a beaded chain. The stamped letters had been rubbed shiny where they had touched skin and fingers for years. Ruby reached for it and let it rest against her palm. "Hi, Grandpa Tom," she said softly. Aaron watched her thumb trace the numbers he knew by heart. "Time to go, kiddo," he said. She put the tag back where it had been and hopped off the bucket. Her notebook disappeared into the pocket of her jacket. The jacket was purple and a little too big and had a rip in one sleeve that Aaron kept meaning to fix. They climbed the metal stairs together. The air grew cooler and less damp. The hum of the furnace faded into the broader murmur of the building. On the lobby level, the world shifted. Concrete became tile. The air smelled of coffee and perfume instead of hot metal. People in suits moved through the space with their badges clipped to belts and lapels. Aaron's own badge swung from a lanyard with the word Operations printed on it. The letters were worn at the edges where his thumb had rubbed them over time. A group spilled out of an elevator. One woman in a red blazer sidestepped Aaron without really looking at him, as if her body had memorized the shape of his path. Ruby reached for his hand. He gave it without thinking. "Do they know your name?" she asked quietly. "Some," he said. They passed the front desk. The security guard, an older man with a crossword puzzle folded on the counter, looked up. "Night Miller," he said. "Night Joe." Joe winked at Ruby. "You staying out of trouble, kid?" "No promises," she said. The doors to the outside opened with a soft hydraulic sigh. Cold air rushed in. It smelled like snow and wet concrete and exhaust. Aaron zipped his jacket higher and tucked a folded list into his pocket. Check marks marched down the page next to brands crossed out in ballpoint pen. "Bus or walk?" Ruby asked. He looked up at the sky. Clouds had pulled tight over the city. The streetlights already had halos. "Walk," he said. "Buses will be a mess if the weather gets worse." Ruby stomped once on the sidewalk to hear the hollow echo. "Race you to the corner. In those shoes, I would be arrested for letting you break your neck." She laughed and fell into step beside him instead. Her mitten found his glove again. Their reflections stretched across the dark glass of Aurora Dynamics behind them and then vanished as they turned the corner into the early winter evening. On the 26th floor of Aurora Dynamics, the night already felt far from the sidewalk, where Aaron and Ruby had walked away into the cold. The conference room was a glass box over Denver. Snow clouds pressed on the city, turning the windows gray. Inside, the air smelled of espresso and dry carpet. Cassandra Hale sat at the head of the table. A clean upward line of revenue glowed on the screen behind her. "That is all she said. Go home. Pretend you remember how." Polite laughter circled the room. Chairs scraped, laptops snapped shut. Executives filed out, careful not to look too eager. When the door closed, the room felt hollow. The projector hummed, casting a faded blue on the wall. To her left, a business magazine lay open. She almost ignored it. Then the headline caught her eye. "Ice Queen of the Rockies." The photo beneath showed her at a gala, chin-lifted, smile absent. Lights flashed around her, but she looked untouched by them, as if the camera had caught ice instead of skin. Cassandra shut the magazine and pushed it aside. Beyond the glass, the open office glowed under softer light. Someone had strung colored bulbs along a row of cubicles. A folding table near the elevators sagged under trays of cookies and a silver urn that was probably cider. Music and laughter seeped along the corridor, muffled by the walls. She picked up the remote and cut the projector. The room dropped into shadow. Only the city remained a scatter of headlamps and office windows floating in the dark. For a moment she let it be. No charts, no bullet points, just the faint reflection of her face and the wide gray sky beyond. A tone sounded in the ceiling, crisp and mechanical. A recorded voice followed. "This is a fire alarm test. Please disregard. This is only a test." The word vibrated through her chest. Fire. Her hand moved to her wrist before she could stop it. Skin brushed the small raised scar that cut across the inside like a pale thread. The room seemed to tilt just slightly. She drew in a breath and crossed to the switch. Overhead lights flared to life, flattening the shadows and washing the city from the glass. She stacked her notes into a neat pile and slid them into a leather folio. The chair gave a soft sigh as she left it. In the hallway, the cinnamon smell of cider hung in the air. A real evergreen tree leaned against one wall, half dressed in tinsel. Someone from marketing lifted a paper cup when she passed. "You joining us, Ms. Hale?" "I have an early flight," she said. "Of course. Happy holidays." She nodded without slowing and turned into the executive wing. The decorations stopped at the corner. Here, the carpet was thicker, the walls bare, the air still. Her office was quiet and dim. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city, and beyond it the dark line of the Front Range. Lights on the highway crept in slow lines. Snow blurred the edges of everything. Her phone buzzed with new alerts. She did not check them. She walked to the coat stand and took down a charcoal coat. The cuff caught at her wrist as she slid her arm in, dragging back the sleeve. The scar flashed white in the low light. Heat prickled along it, memory without image. She smoothed the fabric back into place, buttoned the front, and reached for her bag. On a lower floor, Lauren Pike watched the party from her own window. She left her light off. The office reflected back at her as a dark pane with her face floating in it. Beyond the reflection across the atrium, she saw employees gathered under strings of lights. They lifted paper cups, laughed, leaned in close to hear one another over the music. Lauren turned away from the glass. Her computer screen lit her features in a pale wash. A spreadsheet filled the display, dense with numbers and small red flags. She scrolled, eyes ticking over transfers and line items. Her phone chimed. She picked it up. A message waited. She left the floor. Alone. Garage C. Lauren stared at the words, then typed back. "Stay with her. Do not be seen. License route any stops. Send photos." She sent it and set the phone down beside a framed article. The headline praised Cassandra for guiding Aurora Dynamics through a merger. Near the end, a single line referenced Lauren as support from the finance team. The frame had a thin layer of dust along the top. In the garage, concrete swallowed sound. The air tasted of oil and old exhaust. Fluorescent strips buzzed overhead. Cassandra's heels clicked softly as she stepped from the elevator. Her reserved space sat near the exit ramp. The black SUV waited under a light paint reflecting the pale glow. She unlocked it with a press of her key fob. The lights blinked in response. Inside the cabin smelled of leather and faint citrus. She set her bag on the passenger seat and fit the key into the ignition. The engine turned over with a low vibration. Dashboard lights woke in calm white. A small display announced the outside temperature below freezing, then ticked down another degree. The radio tuned to a news station came up mid-sentence. A significant snowfall across the metro area this evening. The National Weather Service has issued a winter storm warning. Travel is not advised in the foothills after dark. She lowered the volume until the voice faded into the background. On the passenger seat, a thin folder slid sideways when she pulled out of the space. The tab read, "Hail Trust," in block letters. She eased the SUV up the ramp. At the top, the exit gate lifted after she swiped her badge. The security guard in the booth raised a hand. She returned the gesture without really seeing him. Snowflakes spun in the beams of the headlights as she merged into traffic. Downtown towers slipped by glass and steel, reflecting her own lights in brief flashes. At the last downtown exit, she moved into a lane that led toward the southern suburbs and the low darkness beyond them. The light from the city thinned behind her. The road widened. Trees appeared at the edges, bare branches already collecting white. Her hands stayed steady on the wheel. Wipers whispered back and forth, clearing the growing layer of snow from the windshield. Up ahead, the sky was a solid gray sheet, and the rise of the foothills was only a darker band against it. She clicked the headlights to full and drove toward that darker line where the city lights fell away. The walk back to their street took longer than usual. The air felt heavier, as if the clouds were pushing down on the rooftops. By the time Aaron and Ruby reached their block, a thin layer of white dusted the cars and the crooked chain-link fences. Their duplex sat in the middle of the row, paint peeling around the window frames. A strand of dollar store lights sagged above the small porch. Half the bulbs did not turn on at all. Ruby jumped up to reach the switch beside the door and flicked it. A few stubborn bulbs glowed orange and blue. "See," she said. "Festive." "Very high-end," Aaron said. "Ding and said, see." Inside, the heat kicked on with a rattle. The living room smelled faintly of old carpet and laundry detergent. A second-hand couch faced a small television set on a crate. Construction paper snowflakes, Ruby had cut, hung from a string near the ceiling. She shrugged out of her jacket and tossed it on the arm of the couch. Her notebook slid from the pocket and landed on the cushions. She scooped it up and placed it carefully on the coffee table instead. Aaron headed into the kitchenette. The fridge opened with a soft suction sound. Its light revealed a carton of eggs with only 2, left a jug of milk that stood close to the halfway mark, and a jar with the remnants of peanut butter scraped thin along its sides. He closed the door and leaned his forehead against the cool plastic for a second. Ruby appeared in the doorway, sock feet sliding a little on the linoleum. "Can we have hot chocolate tonight?" she asked. "For Christmas Eve, Eve." "Christmas Eve is not a real thing," he said. "Then we should invent it, before someone else does." He thought of the eggs, the milk, the rent notice tucked under a magnet on the fridge, red letters facing the wall. He straightened up and opened the cabinet. One lonely packet of cocoa mix waited on the shelf. "We will see what the store has," he said. Her eyes brightened. "We are going out again, just for a bit. We need a few things." The television in the living room had come on. The local news channel filled the screen with a bright map dotted in blue and white. A weather anchor stood in front of it, animated hand tracing a band of color, moving over the front range. "Winter storm warning in effect for the Denver metro and foothills," she said. "Heavy snow and high winds expected overnight. Travel in the higher elevations could become dangerous." A banner at the bottom scrolled a list of school districts, each followed by "closed" in capital letters. Ruby grabbed her purple jacket again and tugged it on. "Boots," Aaron said. "Real ones, not your space sneakers." She sighed but went to the closet. The boots had been someone else's before, and showed it, but they were warm. She stamped her feet after pulling them on, testing the weight. On the hook beside the door, the dog tag hung from its chain dull silver, catching a bit of the living room light. She reached up and closed her hand around it. "Come on, Grandpa," she murmured. "Field trip." Aaron watched her loop the chain over the hook again, so that it settled back in its place. "You do not have to check him out every time we leave," he said. "I know," she said. "He likes the view." She pushed the door open. A breath of cold swept in, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke from somewhere down the block. They walked past neighboring houses with lit windows. Inside one, a man and woman wrestled a tree into a stand, branches brushing the ceiling. In another, a cluster of children crowded around a table, heads bent over something bright and colorful. Ruby watched them as they went, her eyes lingering on the silhouettes framed in yellow squares. Snowflakes had grown thicker and wetter. They melted on Aaron's cheeks, then began to stick in his hair. Streetlights wore soft halos now. Is it true cars slide by themselves when it is icy? Ruby asked. If people do not respect the road, yes. What does that mean? It means the road does not care how good you think you are at driving. She nodded, as if adding that to some mental manual. The grocery store was 5 blocks away, its sign humming in neon above the doors. Warm air and the smell of bread and coffee wrapped around them as soon as they stepped inside. Fluorescent lights turned the linoleum aisles bright and flat. Holiday music leaked from ceiling speakers in a thin, tinny version of something older. Ruby took one of the smaller baskets and hooked it over her arm. Aaron steered them toward the back, where the cheaper milk lived. She stopped once at the bakery display. A cake frosting smooth and glossy sat behind glass. Plastic Santas marched in a circle on top of it. Can we get one of those? She asked. He checked the little white tag under the tray. The number printed there tugged his stomach tight. We will get something sweeter than usual, he said. Maybe not that sweet. She nodded once and moved on. No drama, just a tiny adjustment behind her eyes. They found store-brand cocoa mix in a row of boxes with brighter packaging. He picked up the plainest and turned it to check the price. Ruby spotted a smaller box with marshmallows printed on it. That one, she said. That one costs more. But it has tiny pillows. He looked down at her. It was not begging, just a statement of preference. The list in his pocket crinkled when he shifted his weight. He put the plain box back and took the one with marshmallows. Ruby smiled. She did not say thank you out loud, but her shoulders relaxed. They moved through the aisles in a practiced pattern. Bread, a bag of rice. Cereal on sale with a cartoon character that looked more tired than cheerful. Aaron did some mental math each time he placed something in the basket. At the end of the canned goods aisle, a television mounted near the ceiling replayed the weather report. This time, the anchor stood in front of a live shot from the foothills. Snow came down in thick sheets behind her blurring trees and a 2-lane road. Conditions are already deteriorating in the higher elevations, she said. If you do not need to drive up there tonight, you should stay home. The camera cut to the road for a moment. A dark SUV passed taillights glowing red through the snow. Aaron looked at the total on the register display as the cashier rang each item. When she named the number, he slid folded bills from his wallet, the ones he had arranged earlier with quiet care. Getting in before the worst of it, the cashier asked. That is the plan, he said. She handed him the receipt and an extra paper bag. Be careful out there. It is already slick as hell. He nodded and shifted the weight of the groceries across both arms. Ruby insisted on carrying the lighter bag, hugging it to her chest. Outside, the world had changed again. Snow covered the parking lot in a thin, uneven layer. Tire tracks cut pale lines through it. The air felt sharper flakes sticking to their eyelashes. Ruby tilted her head back and stuck her tongue out to catch one. It tastes like freezer burn, she said. That is because it is sky freezer burn, he said. She laughed and walked a few steps ahead, leaving boot prints in a staggered path. If it gets much worse, we can turn back, he said. To the store, she asked. He shook his head. Home. She hugged the bag tighter. The wind pushed at her jacket and sent a loose strand of hair across her face. Do you know those glass balls, she said after a while, the ones with tiny houses inside and fake snow? Snow globes? Yes. I always think about the tiny people inside them. It is quiet, and then someone picks it up and shakes everything, for no reason, just to see. That sounds unfair, he said. She shrugged. Maybe, but then the snow falls and it looks pretty, like the world is trying again. They reached the corner and waited for the light, even though no cars passed in that moment. Ruby's breath made small clouds in front of her. The red hand on the signal changed to a white figure, and they stepped into the crosswalk. Far away in the foothills outside the city, Cassandra's SUV climbed a gentle grade. The wipers were working harder now. Snow swirled in the beams of her headlights, a tunnel of white narrowing the world ahead to 2 bright rails of pavement. The radio murmured about closures and delays. She turned it down until the sound was barely there. In Denver, Aaron and Ruby turned into a side street where the snow gathered quieter. Houses on either side glowed behind curtains. A dog barked once and then was silent. Ruby shifted the paper bag from one arm to the other. My hands are cold, she said. We are not far, he answered. They walked on through the thickening curtain of white footsteps, muffled city sounds, fading behind the steady hush of the storm. The road into the foothills narrowed as Cassandra drove. City lights thinned behind her until they were a dull glow in the rearview mirror, more suggestion than shape. Ahead, the world was reduced to 2 beams of white, cutting through thickening snow. The wipers moved back and forth in a tired rhythm. Each swipe cleared the glass for a heartbeat before flakes blurred it again. The wind pressed against the side of the SUV in small, insistent pushes. She checked the clock on the dash, then the outside temperature. It had dropped another degree. Recalculating, the navigation voice announced when she passed a turn the system had preferred. "I know," she said. The map shifted and brightened a thinner road. The line curved away from the highway toward a quieter approach to the neighborhood where the Hale estate sat above the town. She signaled and eased onto the exit ramp. The tires grumbled over snow that hid patches of ice. The ramp gave way to a two-lane road that bent along a shallow ridge. Guardrails traced the right side, their top rails already crusted in white. Beyond them, darkness fell away into a drainage ravine and scattered trees. Her hands tightened on the wheel. The radio murmured at low volume about closures and extended returns in stores. A commercial jingle about last-chance holiday sales tried to sound cheerful and only managed strained. She turned the sound off completely. The only noises left were the engine, the wipers, the faint hiss of snow under tires. The rhythm of the wipers pulled at an older rhythm in her chest. For a second she saw, not white, but gray smoke sliding across glass heat pressing in the taste of copper, and ash, thick in her throat. The scar on her wrist prickled. She forced her gaze to stay on the road. Visibility dipped as a gust threw a sheet of snow across the windshield. The SUV drove straight into it. For half a heartbeat, all she saw was white. Her breath stopped. Fingers dug into the leather of the wheel. Then the wind shifted, the sheet broke, and the road appeared again, dim but present, the center line barely visible. She exhaled. The air felt thin. In Denver, Aaron and Ruby turned onto a stretch of street that climbed gently above a small ravine, where a creek ran in the spring. Tonight, the drop was only a deeper shadow, the railing along the sidewalk cradling a new line of snow. The grocery bags rustled with each of Aaron's steps. The heavier one cut into his fingers through the thin plastic handles. He remembered too late that they should have asked for paper. Too late now. Ruby kept close, shoulders hunched against the windbag hugged tight to her chest. "Feels like someone turned the volume down on the world," she said. Snow swallowed the usual sounds, traffic, distant music, voices from open windows. The city was still there, but quieter, wrapped in cotton. At the top of the hill, the sidewalk met a cross street that curved alongside the ridge. The guardrail here was taller, bolted into concrete. A car rounded the bend ahead, its headlights smeared by falling snow. It moved slower than the posted speed, but still too fast for the way the road had become. Aaron watched the way its tires cut through the thin accumulation. Any darker patches would be ice. The thought finished in his head at the same moment that the SUV in front of them hit one. The rear of the vehicle slid sideways. The brake lights flared red bright and sudden in the gray. The SUV slewed toward the guardrail, corrected for a second, then fishtailed harder. Rubber squealed against ice. Ruby stopped walking. The bag in her arms swayed. "Dad," she said. "I see it." The SUV swung again, broadside, now moving toward the edge. One of the rear tires smacked the curb with a dull thud. The impact shoved the vehicle closer to the guardrail. Metal squeaked as bumper met rail. For a moment, it seemed like that would be enough. The car shuddered, balanced. Then the rail bent. The SUV tipped toward the drop. Aaron set the grocery bags down without looking where. One toppled, tin cans rolling in slow arcs that left small tracks in the snow. "Ruby, stay here," he said. "Back by the pole. Do not move until I tell you." She grabbed at his sleeve. "Ruby." He turned, made sure her eyes were on his. "Right by that streetlight," he said, pointing. "You do not come closer, no matter what." She swallowed hard, nodded, and backed up until her shoulders met the cold metal pole. Aaron ran. The ground felt unreliable under his boots, sliding slightly with each push. By the time he reached the SUV, the front half had pivoted over the edge of the embankment. It hung at an angle, front wheels in the air, rear tires barely kissing the road. Inside, through the side window, he saw a woman. Her hands were locked at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. Her eyes were wide, staring at something that was not the snow in front of her. "Put it in park," he shouted, but her gaze did not move. The engine revved once as her foot slipped. The vehicle jerked. The guardrail groaned and dropped another inch. He grabbed the door handle. It stuck. He yanked harder. Nothing. The passenger side might be less strained. He ran around the back and sliding on wet metal. His shoulder clipped the bent rail. Pain flared and vanished behind the rush that carried him. The passenger door opened a few inches, then jammed. He shoved with his hip. It moved just enough for him to wedge his fingers inside and pull. The door gave with a screech and swung wide. Cold air rushed into the cabin. The smell of hot engine rubber and expensive perfume mixed in his nose. "Ma'am," he said, leaning in, "you have to let go of the wheel. We need to get you out." Her eyes snapped to him, as if she had not realized anyone else existed until that second. Lights appeared on the road above another car approaching. Its headlights swept across the inside of the SUV, bright and quick. Cassandra flinched hard. Her hands flew from the wheel to her face. The light seemed to blind her more than the snow did. Breath tore out of her in ragged bursts. "Please," she said. The word came out thin. "I cannot be here." The SUV shifted under his feet. The front dipped half an inch metal, complaining under strain. He reached across, unfastened her seatbelt, and slid his arms under her shoulders. "This is going to feel strange," he said. "Just let me do the work." He pulled her toward him with a short, sharp motion, like lifting a heavy box. For one suspended moment, her weight added to the tilt. Then her boots left the floor, and her body cleared the edge of the seat. He took 2 quick steps backward, dragging her with him, and both of them stumbled away from the open door. Behind them, the SUV lurched further. The last part of the guardrail surrendered with a crunch. The rear tires lost their grip, and the vehicle slid off the brink. They watched it go without meaning to. It dropped nose first into the slope, rolled once, and came to rest against a stand of scrubby trees halfway down. Glass shattered in muted pops. The world went very quiet. Snow fell between them and the wreck in a soft curtain. Cassandra's knees buckled. Aaron tightened his hold and lowered her to sit against the guardrail where it was still solid. Her breath came in shallow gasps that clouded the air in front of her. Ruby stood where he had left her, fingers clutching the streetlight pole. Her eyes were huge, reflecting the broken shape of the car below. "Aaron," she called. "I am fine," he called back. "Stay there." He felt Cassandra flinch slightly at the name. She was staring past him now, not at the wreck, but at the space where it had been moments before. Her hands shook as she tried to smooth her coat down, as if straightening fabric might rewind the last minute. Up close, he saw that her hair, now limp with melted snow, had once been arranged carefully. Her lipstick had worn away, leaving the line of her mouth pale. "You should go to a hospital," he said, "or at least urgent care. You might be in shock." "No," she said. The word came faster than any other she had spoken. "No hospitals, no cameras, no police. Please." "There was an accident," he said. "Somebody will pass. They will call." "No," she repeated. Panic pushed color into her face. "They will recognize the car, the plates. There will be photos. I cannot have that. Not tonight." He looked down the slope. The SUV had come to rest at an angle. Steam or smoke leaked from under the crumpled hood. There was no fire yet. Snow helped. "Anyone else in the car?" he asked. "No." "Are you hurt anywhere besides everywhere?" Her laugh was a short, broken sound. "Nothing is broken," she said. "I do not think so." He checked quickly, hands, careful eyes scanning for obvious injuries. No blood on her coat, no unnatural angles to her limbs. Behind him, a car slowed as it approached. Its driver took in the bent guardrail and the empty stretch of air beyond, then the wreck below. A window buzzed down. "You need me to call someone?" a man's voice asked, edged with nerves. Aaron gave the quick answer he would give for both of them. "No, we are all right. Already called a tow." He tapped his pocket as if a phone rested there. "Road is slick. Take it slow." The driver hesitated, then nodded and rolled on, probably eager to get clear of the bad luck spot. "You should not have done that," Cassandra said quietly. "Done what?" "Sent him away." "He could have helped." "You told me no police," he said. "He would have been the first to dial." She pressed her lips together. A shiver ran through her. Something slid from the open edge of her coat and dropped into the snow by his boot. It made a soft, metallic sound as it hit. He crouched and brushed the snow away. A small metal tag lay there on a short chain. It was about the size of a coin, stamped with letters and numbers that had darkened with age. He picked it up between finger and thumb. Cold bit into his skin through the metal. Hal E. Tower. Denver Fire Dept. 12/24/01. The letters pulled at him. The date came into focus last, as if his eyes did not want to put it together. He knew that date. It lived in his chest the way old scars lived under skin. The night everything had shifted. His jaw tightened. Cassandra saw where he was looking. She reached out quickly, fingers brushing his as she took the tag back. Her coordination was slightly off, like she was adjusting to a world that had changed tilt. "It is an old thing," she said. "It should have stayed where it was." "You were there," he said. It was not a question, but she stiffened anyway. Her grip closed around the tag until her knuckles whitened. For a moment, he thought she might snap the chain. Snow collected on the shoulders of her coat and on his work jacket. Ruby left the streetlight pole and came closer, careful steps along the sidewalk, until she stood a few feet away. "Dad," she said softly, "she is freezing." He looked at Cassandra again. Her lips had gone from flush to blue at the edges. "Do you live nearby?" he asked. She nodded once. Farther into the hills, off Ridgeway, the Hale property. He knew that name. Everyone did. Big house above town, the kind people pointed to when they drove by. "Phone?" he asked. She pulled a device from her coat pocket. The screen was a spider web of cracks. When she held the button, nothing came to life. "It died when the car did," she said. Another gust of wind pushed snow into their faces. Aaron felt it bite through his jeans, through the thin socks he should not have worn on a night like this. "The buses are probably not running up there anymore," he said. "Cabs will not want the hill in this weather." She looked from the wreck to the road, to his face, and then to Ruby's. "I just need to get home," she said. "Once I am there, I can fix the rest." Ruby shifted the paper bag from one arm to the other and spoke before he could. "We can walk," she said. "We walk a lot." Aaron met Cassandra's eyes. There was something like pride in them bent now under fear. He shrugged once. "It is either here in the cold, waiting for someone who brings attention you do not want," he said, "or walking. I am going your direction for a while anyway." "You do not know that," she said, but there was no real strength in the objection. "Give me your arm," he said. "Try to lean, not drag." He picked up the fallen grocery bag, set the toppled cans back inside, and gathered both sets in one hand. With the other, he helped her rise. Her legs shook, but they held. She pulled her coat tighter around her and slipped the Hale Tower tag back into her pocket fingers, lingering on it like she needed to feel the metal to be sure it still existed. Ruby fell in on his other side, small boots crunching in the snow. Together, the three of them turned away from the break in the guardrail and started along the road into the thickening storm. They walked with the wind in their faces. The road curved away from the broken guardrail and climbed. Snow gathered along the edges where plows had not reached. It softened the world, hiding cracks in the pavement and the drop on one side. Cassandra's boots were made for glossy lobby floors, not slush. After the first few minutes, her steps shortened. She tried to hide the way her knees shook and did not quite manage it. "Tell me if you need to stop," Aaron said. said. "I am fine," she answered. Her voice had less breath than the words needed. Ruby walked on his other side, shoulders bunched in her jacket. The grocery bag pressed against her chest, cardboard box corners poking the fabric. "How far is your house?" Ruby asked. Cassandra glanced at her, then ahead. "A mile from the turnoff," she said. "Maybe a little more." Ruby made a small face, and then smoothed it away. "Do you live there by yourself?" she said. "Yes. No pets. No kids." The corner of Cassandra's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "Apparently not," she said. Another gust drove snow sideways, turning the air into a gray veil. Aaron lowered his head and watched the glowing shapes of parked cars on the shoulder as they passed. The storm made everything look unfamiliar, like the world had been rearranged around them. A truck crept by in the opposite lane, chains rattling beneath its tires. The driver stared at the three of them with the expression people reserve for the sight of others doing something that looks dangerous and necessary at the same time. "Your name is Aaron," Cassandra said after a while. "Your daughter called you that." "That is right." "Miller." "Yes." She knew the surname. It put another weight on the metal tag in her pocket. "I am Cassandra," she said. "Cassandra Hale." Ruby stumbled for half a step. "Hall," she repeated. "Like the building." Cassandra nodded once. "Like the building." Ruby did not ask more. She walked in silence, the word turning over in her head. They reached the turn where a smaller road branched off from the main one. A wooden sign leaned under the weight of snow. Someone had carved Ridgeway Lane into it years ago. The letters held a darker shadow than the rest of the wood. "Here," Cassandra said. The lane narrowed further, flanked by trees that arched over it and collected snow in their bare branches. Beyond them, the land fell away in places and rose in others. The storm blurred the lines. "So, when you said you live in the hills," Aaron said, "you really meant it." "I work in glass towers," she said. "I do not have to sleep in one too." The lane ended at an iron gate set into a stone wall. The gate was tall enough that Ruby had to crane her neck to see the top. Snow had settled along the horizontal bars, turning them into pale stripes. A small keypad sat on a post beside the entrance. Cassandra stepped up to it, fingers clumsy from cold. She hesitated for a moment, then tapped in a series of numbers. The metal beeped and the gate clicked. Motors hummed somewhere in the stone. The iron swung inward, slow and deliberate, opening onto a long drive that curved out of sight. They stepped through. The gate began to close behind them as quietly as it had opened. The driveway cut through a stand of pines and aspens, their trunks dark against the snow. Lights set low along the edge glowed a soft gold, guiding the way up the slope. Between the trees, the house came into view. Ruby's breath made a soft sound in her throat. It was larger than she had imagined. A wide front with stonework and long windows, roof lines stepping back into the slope. Light spilled from many of the windows, warm and steady. Wreaths hung on the doors, their red ribbons bright even in the storm. "It looks like a hotel," Ruby whispered. "It looks like it belongs in a different movie," Aaron said under his breath. The driveway opened into a circle in front of wide steps. A carport jutted from one side empty. Snow had drifted in along its edges untouched by tire marks. Cassandra's pace quickened as they approached the door. Fatigue and anger chased each other in her body. Anger won by a small margin. She keyed in another code on a panel by the frame. The lock clicked. She pushed the door open and stepped aside. Heat rolled out along with a smell of polished wood citrus cleaner, and something softer under that. Cinnamon and nutmeg, hints of clove. Ruby peeked around Aaron's arm and stepped inside. The foyer was 2 stories high. A chandelier hung from the ceiling lights turned low. A staircase curved up the right side with a railing that matched the front gate in iron and simple lines. Paintings in expensive frames watched from the walls, landscapes and portraits that looked like they belonged in a quieter century. To the left, an archway opened into a room with a tree in it. A real evergreen taller than any Ruby had seen reached almost to the 2nd story. Lights wound around it unplugged. Boxes of ornaments sat open on the floor. Half of the tree was dressed in glass and silver. The other half was bare. "You started decorating," Ruby said, "and then you stopped." Cassandra set her bag down on a small table by the door. Her keys made a soft sound against the wood. She shrugged out of her coat without answering. Aaron did not move from the threshold. His boots left wet prints on the pale tile. It was a minute before he realized he was holding his breath. "You can take off your shoes," Cassandra said, noticing his hesitation. "It is just a floor." It was not just a floor. It was smooth stone streaked with warm tones laid in large pieces that flowed together like water. He set the grocery bags down carefully and bent to unlace his boots. His socks were damp. He was suddenly very aware of that fact. Ruby unlaced her boots too and lined them up next to his. Her socks had cartoons on them that now stared up at the ceiling. "Staff gone for the holiday?" Aaron asked. "I sent them home," Cassandra said. "They have families. People who would notice if they were missing." The words slipped out before she could stop them. She busied herself hanging her coat in the closet to hide the flash of embarrassment. "Come in," she added. "You will freeze in the doorway." They stepped farther into the house. The ceiling in the foyer absorbed their footsteps, turning them soft. The living room to the left was sunken slightly below the hall. A stone fireplace filled most of one wall, flames already moving behind the glass screen. A log basket sat untouched, suggesting that someone had lit the fire and then gone elsewhere. Cassandra stopped at the edge of the room. Ruby went straight to the hearth. She held out her hands, fingers spread, feeling the heat. "Nice fire," she said. "We only ever get the pretend kind on TV." Aaron watched Cassandra out of the corner of his eye. She had gone very still. Her shoulders had drawn up her throat, working as she swallowed. The fire painted warm color on one side of her face, but there was nothing warm about her expression. She did not come any closer than the top step of the sunken room. Ruby looked from the flames to Cassandra, then back again. "You do not like it," Ruby said softly. Yes, I'm meeting dead, It is fine," Cassandra replied. "It is cold outside." Aaron cleared his throat. "Kitchen," he asked. "I can heat something. Soup, tea, whatever you have." Relief flickered in her eyes, not so much at the offer as at the change of attention. "Through here," she said. The kitchen was big enough to fit their entire apartment inside it. Stainless steel appliances lined one wall. A large refrigerator hummed quietly, and a marble-topped island sat in the middle like a stage. Bowls with whole oranges and pomegranates were arranged in careful piles. A small pot sat on the stove, the dregs of something dark clinging to its sides. Cinnamon sticks floated in a shallow pool at the bottom, cider Cassandra said. "From this morning. Before I decided I did not want it." Aaron opened the fridge. Shelves lined with glass jars labeled sauces, forgotten leftovers. A carton of eggs with most of them untouched. Containers of things he could not name without reading their labels. In the back he found a row of canned soup, the kind that never really went bad. "Chicken noodle," he said. "That is universal." He took 2 cans down and glanced at her for approval. "Use whatever you need," she said. He found a saucepan, opened the cans, and poured the contents in. The electric burner glowed red under his hand. He adjusted the heat with the confidence of someone who had spent plenty of time coaxing old stoves into cooperation. Steam began to rise. The smell of salt and processed chicken joined the softer scent of spice that still lingered from the abandoned cider. "How long have you been out here by yourself?" he asked. Officially, she said 5 years. Unofficially, longer. And you like it. I like the quiet, she said. I like that the walls do not talk back at the end of the day. He stirred the soup. Outside wind slid along the windows with a soft moan. Sometimes quiet is just another kind of noise, he said. She did not answer. Ruby appeared in the doorway barefoot on the tile notebook in hand. She looked smaller against the high cabinets. Your house echoes, she announced. I know, Cassandra said. It is like when you talk into a can and your voice comes back, but slower. Ruby opened the notebook and began a new page. I am mapping it, she said. So, I do not get lost on the way to the bathroom. There are at least 3 doors that go nowhere. They go somewhere, Cassandra said, just not anywhere interesting. In the driveway, a pair of headlights shut off. The sound of an engine died. Snow swallowed the noise that followed. A man in a dark jacket stepped out of a lower car parked just off the road, beyond the reach of the gate lights. He pulled his hood up and walked along the stone wall until he found a place where the trees grew closer together. From there, he could see part of the front of the house between branches. He lifted a camera from under his coat. The lens was already attached long and narrow. He wiped melted snow from the front glass with the edge of his sleeve and brought it to his eye. Through the lens, the Hale house shrank and then widened, details snapping into focus. The front door stood closed now. Light glowed in the lower windows. He moved careful to keep to the shadows until he found an angle on a side window. Yellow light poured out onto the white snow. Through the glass, figures moved. He adjusted the focus. Cassandra crossed the living room and stopped at the edge of the light from the fire. A man in dark work clothes came in carrying bowls. A child bounced ahead of him and folded herself onto the couch without hesitation. He pressed the shutter. The camera clicked softly. Image after image froze on the memory card. Inside, Aaron handed Ruby a bowl of soup, and then one to Cassandra. She hesitated, then took it with both hands. The heat seeped into her fingers. She sat on the arm of a chair rather than the cushions, as if not yet ready to relax. Ruby slurped the first spoonful and made an appreciative sound. Best Christmas Eve dinner, she said, we have ever had in a mansion. This is not a mansion, Cassandra said. Ruby looked around at the high ceiling, the big tree, the fireplace, the expensive silence. It is not a mansion, she said. Aaron hid a smile in his soup. The fire crackled behind the glass. Snow slid down the outside of the windows in slow sheets. The house, with all its space and polished surfaces, held their 3 voices as if it were not sure yet what to do with them. Outside, the man with the camera shifted his weight, found a steadier angle, and kept shooting as the storm deepened. Later, the soup bowl sat empty on the coffee table. Ruby lay stretched out on the couch, feet tucked under a throw blanket she had pulled from the back. Her notebook rested open on her stomach pencil, still in her hand. Her eyelids drooped in slow blinks. The fire in the stone hearth had settled into a steady rhythm. Flames moved around the logs behind the glass screen, licking at blackened edges. The sound they made was small but constant, a soft crackle that filled the pauses in conversation. Cassandra sat in an armchair angled toward the fire, but not close to it. She held a mug of tea in both hands. The steam had thinned, but there was still warmth under her fingers. She watched Ruby with an expression Aaron had not seen on her face before. Something like curiosity, something like caution. She will fall asleep right there if you let her, Aaron said. Ruby stirred. I am awake, she protested quietly. Barely, he said. Your eyes keep closing. They are just resting. He took the mug she had abandoned on the table and carried it to the kitchen. The tiled floor was cool under his socks. He rinsed the bowls, stacked them in the sink, and glanced out through the dark glass above the counter. He could see his reflection more than the outside now. His own face and the pale shapes of cabinets floated over a faint hint of trees moving in wind. In the living room, Ruby rolled onto her side so she could see the fire. It looks different here, she said. How, Cassandra asked. When the heater in our building clicks on, you just hear this crash sound in the basement. Sometimes it smells like dust. Your fire looks like it is supposed to be here. Cassandra followed her gaze. The flames reflected in her eyes, turning them a warmer color. It was here long before I was, she said. The fireplace, I mean. My grandfather had this place built. He liked things that lasted. Did he live here? Ruby asked. Sometimes. Cassandra sipped her tea. Mostly he liked to tell people he owned it. Ruby nodded slowly, as if that answered more than one question. The overhead lights flickered. It was brief, just a quick dip and a return, enough to make the room blink. Ruby looked up. Did you forget to pay your electricity too? She asked. Cassandra glanced at the fixture in the ceiling. No, she said. The lines out here are old. The storm is not helping. Aaron came back with a dish towel in his hands, drying his fingers. The weather report did not look pretty, he said. You have a backup system, right? 2 sources if the lines go. There is a generator, she said, somewhere under the house. The company that installed it sends reports. I skimmed them. The lights flickered again, longer this time. The fire in the hearth held steady its glow, suddenly more pronounced. Ruby counted under her breath. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. The room went dark. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen cut off mid-note. The soft motor sound from the heating system faded. For a moment there was no noise at all. Then the wind outside pushed against the windows with a low moan, and the fire in the hearth drew their attention like a living thing. Its light jumped and stretched, making the shadows on the walls leap with it. The room they had just been sitting in became a theater of moving shapes. Cassandra's fingers clenched around her mug. China clicked faintly against her ring. Her breathing changed in the same instant. The even measured pace broke into shorter, sharper pulls. She was looking at the fire, but it was clear she was seeing somewhere else. Her pupils had blown wider. The muscles along her jaw locked. Aaron's hand found the flashlight in his work jacket almost before his brain registered that he had moved. The habit was that deep. He clicked it on and swept the beam across the coffee table. The rug, the low steps that led into the sunken living area. Pale light carved out familiar shapes again. Ruby pushed herself up on one elbow. Cool, she said, but her voice was softer than usual. It is just a power cut, Aaron said. The storm is making the grid angry. Happens at work all the time. His words went toward Cassandra as much as toward Ruby. Cassandra did not seem to hear him at first. Her gaze had fixed on the glass screen over the fire. Reflections of flame shivered on the surface like something trapped. In her head, the glass was not there. Smoke pressed against her face. Heat crawled up her legs. The sound of cracking beams was louder than any wind. People were shouting in the distance. Sprinklers spat lukewarm water that turned the air into a choking mix of steam and ash. The room around her now was too still, too quiet. The only sound was the fire, and the fire sounded like memory. Ruby swung her legs off the couch and stood. In the flashlight beam, her hair looked dark, her eyes almost black. Mrs. Hale, she said, Cassandra blinked at her. The present came back by inches. Her knuckles were white where they gripped the mug. Breathe, Ruby said. Like my dad does when the heater makes that banging noise, and he thinks it is going to explode. Aaron tried to hide a wince. Cassandra's mouth twitched once. I am breathing, she said, but she did as the girl said. In, out, in again. The air scraped a little less on each pass. Good, Ruby said. See, still here. Nothing is on fire that is not supposed to be. Aaron moved to the wall near the kitchen. Your breaker box in here, or do I have to guess? He asked. In the hallway, Cassandra said, by the pantry, but if the whole neighborhood lost power, the box will not fix it. Generator, he reminded her. She nodded, pulling herself back piece by piece. Right, there is a panel in the basement. I have not looked at it in a long time. He swept the flashlight beam to find the hallway and followed it. The metal door of the breaker box opened with a dry creak. Rows of switches stared back, all in neat lines. He ran the light over them. None had flipped. He closed the panel again. Basement it is, he said. Ruby was at his elbow now. Can I come? She asked. Stay here with Ms. Hale, he said. Someone needs to make sure she does not argue with the fire. That is a weird thing to say, Ruby replied. Is she? It got your attention, though. He put the flashlight into her hand. You take this, he said. Point it where she needs it. I know how to walk in the dark. She frowned at him for a moment, then nodded. The weight of the flashlight seemed to straighten her shoulders. Aaron felt his way along the wall until he found the door that led to the basement stairs. It opened onto another kind of darkness, one that smelled of concrete cardboard and the faint tang of oil. The steps were wide and smooth. His socks whispered on the surface as he descended. At the bottom, his eyes adjusted enough to pick out shapes. He did not need much. He looked instead for sounds. There, a faint steady ticking somewhere to his left. A machine not running but thinking about it. He followed that. The generator sat in its own alcove, a gray box the size of a small car. Pipes and cables ran from it into the wall and ceiling like arteries. A small digital display on the front blinked a red light. He pressed the button beside it. The screen came to life in simple text. The words were not friendly. Fault. Fuse. He let out a slow breath. Of course, he said to the machine. He ran his fingers along the side panel until he found the catches. They popped open with a stiff sound. Inside wires and components waited in tight formations. One blackened fuse sat slightly askew in its housing. The plastic around it bubbled and split. "Somebody had a bad night," he murmured. He dug into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out the multi-tool he carried everywhere. The metal was cold against his palm. It unfolded with a familiar series of clicks. He eased the damaged fuse out and set it on top of the generator. The replacement tray was mounted nearby. He checked it. 2 spares nestled in plastic slots. "Thank you, expensive people," he said. He slid one of the new fuses into place and made sure it sat snug and clean. Then he closed the panel and locked the catches again. His hand hovered over the start switch. "Be nice," he told the machine. "We have had enough drama tonight." He pressed. For a moment there was nothing. Then the generator coughed. Metal vibrated under his fingers. The hum deepened and steadied into a low, reassuring thrum. Lights flickered along the ceiling. One, then another, then the whole row came on, washing the basement in flat white. Upstairs, Ruby let out a whoop that carried through the floor. "Dad did it," she shouted. Cassandra heard the distant roar of the generator through the bones of the house. It reminded her of rescue trucks, of engines starting, but this sound stayed contained. It did not come with sirens. The lamps in the living room blinked back to life. The refrigerator in the kitchen hummed. Even the little indicator on the thermostat glowed again. The fire in the hearth looked less like the only source of light and more like one piece of a larger picture. Ruby ran to the top of the basement stairs and called down. "Everything is on," she said. "You scared it into working." "Threats are the first step in any good repair," Aaron answered as he came up. "If that fails, bribery." He stepped back into the foyer, blinking once as his eyes adjusted to the brightness. Cassandra was standing near the archway to the living room. She had set her empty mug aside. Her hands were empty too, now. They hung at her sides, fingers not quite relaxed but not clenched either. "You know your way around more than old apartment boilers," she said. "A machine is a machine," he replied. "They all want the same things." "And what is that?" she asked. "To be noticed when they complain," he said, "and not to be ignored until they blow." Ruby made a face. "You are talking about feelings again without saying you are talking about feelings." Aaron pretended not to hear. Cassandra looked past him toward the closed basement door, then back at him. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was quieter than it had been all evening, but there was weight in it. "For the car, for this, for staying." "Just doing what I know how to do," he said. "Plenty of people know how to do things," she replied. "They still do not do them." He could not think of an answer to that did not sound like deflection. In the living room, the fire continued to burn behind the glass. Cassandra's eyes went to it again, but this time she did not freeze. She walked to the edge of the sunken floor and stopped there a step closer than before. Ruby watched the two of them, then moved to stand between the fire and the chairs. She switched the flashlight off, then on again, sending a thin beam across the room and up to the high ceiling. "See," she said, "now there are lots of lights. The fire has friends." Outside, the wind kept throwing snow against the windows. The man with the camera saw the house go dark and then blaze back to life. He adjusted his settings and kept watching through his lens as figures moved against the warm frames of light. Snow thickened against the windows until the glass looked frosted from the outside in. Aaron was taking the empty soup pot back to the kitchen when something flickered at the corner of his vision. Not firelight, something sharper. He stopped and turned toward the far window. Beyond the glass, the yard lay under an uneven blanket of white. Beyond that, the tree line blurred into the storm. For a moment, he saw nothing but wind. Then a darker shape shifted between the trunks. He stepped closer. A pinprick of light flashed once through the branches there and gone. Not lightning, not a car, something small and controlled. Aaron Ruby's voice came from behind him. "What is it?" "Stay with Ms. Hale," he said. He did not raise his voice. The tone did the work. He crossed the room and set his hand against the cold pane. There, a human outline where no one should be half hidden by an evergreen weighed down with snow. He turned away and went to the front door. Cassandra watched him shrug into his jacket. "Where are you going?" "Someone is outside," he said. "I will be right back." He opened the door before she could answer. Cold slapped his face. Snow swirled in the entryway until he pulled the door tight behind him. For a moment, he stood under the deep porch roof, letting his eyes adjust to the shift between warm light and the flat, dim white outside. The front lights cast a shallow pool of gold onto the steps. Beyond that, the yard rolled away into shadow. The trees at the edge moved with the wind. He stepped into the snow. It came up over the tops of his boots now and tried to pull at his feet with each step. The air had that dense, quiet feeling that came when a storm decided to stay. He moved along the side of the house, keeping low where the snowbanks were deeper. The wind found every gap in his jacket. His breath came out in clouds that blew sideways. Halfway down the side wall, he saw it again. Another brief flare, a blink of pale light. He cut between two pines and came around the back of a smaller outbuilding. There, half crouched near a window, was a man. The stranger wore a dark hooded jacket and gloves. A camera hung from a strap around his neck. The lens pointed toward the lit window, where if Aaron looked, he knew he would see the edge of the living room and the glow of the fire. The man did not see him yet. The camera was at his eye body intent. Snow had already begun to collect on the top of the lens. Aaron closed the distance in 3 quick strides. "Hey," he said. The man flinched and spun. The camera swung with him. For a second, both of them grabbed for the same thing, handles slipping under wet gloves. "Easy," the stranger said. His accent had city edges. "Just taking a few shots. Private work." "This is private property," Aaron said. Snow blew in his face as he spoke. It clung to his eyelashes, the salt of it stinging his eyes. The man tried to tug the camera free. Aaron held the strap, then the body muscles tightening without thought. The angle changed. The strap slipped over the photographer's head. The camera dropped. Aaron caught it against his chest with both hands. The stranger swore once, low and sharp, then shoved Aaron. It was not a hard hit, just enough to make him shift his weight to stay upright. By the time he steadied himself, the man had turned and was running head down back toward the road. Aaron started after him, boots punching holes in the smooth snow. 2, 3 strides, and he could already tell it was useless. The man knew where he was going. Aaron did not. If he chased him into the trees and slipped, they would both be lost in the dark. He stopped. His breath came hard, steaming in the cold. The stranger reached the edge of the property, vaulted the low stone wall near the road, and disappeared into the white. Aaron stood there for another second, listening. Only the wind answered, running through the branches like distant surf. He looked down at the camera in his hands. It was heavier than it looked, expensive. The strap dangled, the fabric wet and stiffening in the cold. Snow had begun to gather on the top of it. He wiped it away with his sleeve and carried it back toward the house. Inside, the warmth hit him like a wall. His cheeks tingled as the blood came back. Melting snow traced cold lines down his neck. Ruby was standing near the foyer, the flashlight still in her hand. Cassandra stood a little behind her, as if she had tried to keep herself from following, and failed. "Who was that?" she asked. "Someone who did not want to be recognized," Aaron said. "He left this." He lifted the camera slightly. Cassandra's eyes narrowed, not in confusion, in recognition. "Let me see," she said. They moved to the coffee table in the living room. Aaron set the camera down on the polished wood. It looked out of place there, black and utilitarian among the gleam and muted color. Ruby climbed onto the couch to get a better view. "Is it broken?" she asked. "Does not look like it," Aaron said. He pressed the power button with the care he reserved for unfamiliar machines. The screen on the back glowed to life. A menu flashed, then a still image. The photo showed the living room they were standing in now. It had been taken from outside through the glass. The frame caught Cassandra in profile, standing near the fire, Aaron beside her with a bowl in his hand. Ruby was blurred, mid-step, hair lifted, mouth open in a laugh. Aaron clicked to the next image. Another angle. The three of them again, but closer, the warmth of the room isolated against the dark. "They were watching us," Ruby said. Her voice had lost some of its usual playfulness. "Who would do this?" Aaron asked. He turned his head toward Cassandra. She was very still. Her face had gone pale under the soft light. One of her hands pressed against her pocket, where the Hale Tower tag sat like a stone. "A board member," she said. "A rival. Someone with a camera and a story they want to tell." Lauren, Ruby said before she could stop herself. She had heard the name in the news when they ran pieces about the company sometimes. It was usually paired with words like numbers and strategy. Cassandra did not answer. She did not need to. On the camera screen, another photo appeared. This one was framed tighter, cutting off parts of the room. It made Aaron look closer to Cassandra than he had been, made Ruby look smaller, almost like an afterthought on the edge of the image. Out of context, the picture could have carried any caption. Aaron clicked the camera off and set it down again, screen dark. "Whatever this is," he said, "it is not good." "No," Cassandra said, "it is not." Her gaze drifted to the fire. The flames moved in a constant dance. The glass in front of them held it all in place. Ruby slid off the couch and picked up her notebook before it fell. Her pencil rolled across the table and bumped into the camera with a small tap. The metal tag in Cassandra's pocket felt heavier with each heartbeat. It might as well have been made of stone instead of stamped steel. She drew it out without quite deciding to. The chain slid after it, catching briefly on the edge of her pocket before pooling in her palm. The tag lay in the center of her hand. The words were clear even in the low light. "Hale Tower, Denver Fire Depth, 12/24/01. She set it on the table next to the camera. Aaron looked at it. The date sat there, impossible to ignore. "You carry that around," he said. "Yes." The word was small. "Why?" "Because I live," she said. It landed in the quiet between them. Ruby sat very still. Aaron reached out and touched the edge of the tag with one fingertip. The metal was cool against his skin. "My dad died that night," he said. "Captain Thomas Miller. Engine company out of downtown." Cassandra's throat moved. She had known the name as a line in an article, a plaque on a wall, a short speech at a memorial one year. Hearing it now from his mouth made it sound different. "I remember the way they said it on the news," she said. "Captain Miller, 39, survived by his wife and son." The camera panned to people in coats on the sidewalk. "I was in a hospital bed. I turned the sound off." Aaron's hand withdrew. He folded his fingers together in his lap. "I was 14, he said. "He told me to stay in the truck. I did not. The back doors were not locked. I followed the smoke into the lobby and then up the stairs. The alarms were so loud it felt like the building was screaming." His eyes were on the fire now, but he was not seeing it. "There was a girl in the hallway," he said. "You were sitting on the floor against the wall. Your hair was bigger. You were crying without making noise." Cassandra remembered the wall at her back, the way the carpet had burned her palms, the way the world had narrowed to the sound of her own heartbeat, and a door that would not open. "I could not find my father," she said. "He had gone back to his office. The hallway kept getting smaller. I grabbed your arm," Aaron said. "You did not want to move. I pulled you anyway. Down the stairs around the corner, where the smoke was not as bad. My dad was there at the end of the hall. He yelled at me to get out. I did not listen fast enough." He stopped. The air in the room felt heavier. "The ceiling fell," he said at last, "between us. Someone pushed me through the last door. It shut. I never saw him again." The only sound for a long moment was the soft pop of resin in the burning logs. Cassandra's eyes had filled without her noticing. She blinked, and one tear escaped, tracing a line down her cheek. "I remember a hand on my arm," she said. "Small, not like the firefighter's gloves. It hurt when you pulled me. I was angry at you for that. For days, I did not know." She broke off. Her shoulders shook once barely, and then again. Ruby looked from one adult to the other. She scooted forward until her knees touched the coffee table. "Grandpa went in to save people," she said quietly. "Right, Dad?" Aaron nodded. It was not entirely a nod. It was something slower and heavier, but it was enough. "Then there had to be someone to come out," Ruby said. "So he could be a hero. That is how that works." Cassandra let out a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob. "You do not even know me," she said. Ruby shrugged one shoulder. "I know you have a big house and a tree with only half its stuff on it, and you gave us soup. And you keep looking at the fire like it is going to tell you a secret." Cassandra lifted one hand to her face. More tears had come. She swiped at them with her fingers, impatient with their existence and unable to stop them. "I thought if I carried that tag long enough," she said, looking at the piece of metal on the table, "it would make the math work out. Him, me. The building, the company. All of it. It never did." Aaron watched her. For 20 years, the name Hale Tower had tasted like smoke in his mouth. Standing here in the house, that name had built. Looking at the woman who had gotten out when his father had not, he expected anger to rise. Something else came instead. Tiredness. The bone-deep kind that came from holding a weight too long. "It does not add up," he said. "It never will." He went in. "You came out. I came out. There is not a number for that." Ruby leaned over the table and picked up the tag. She held it between thumb and forefinger, studying it as if it were just another piece of hardware. "He was a hero," she said. "That is the only part that matters." She reached for Cassandra's hand and turned it palm up. The skin there was thinner, the lines deeper than on Ruby's own small palm. She set the tag back into it. "If you give it back, he will still be a hero," she said. "If you keep it, he will still be a hero. You cannot change that now." Cassandra's fingers closed around the metal. Her shoulders hunched forward. The fight she had been carrying for years seemed to have nowhere to go. Ruby moved without asking and climbed up onto the arm of the chair beside her. She wrapped both arms around Cassandra's shoulders and held on. For a heartbeat, Cassandra stayed rigid. Then something in her chest gave way. She leaned into the small, fierce hug and let herself bend. Her tears came quietly sliding down onto Ruby's hair, dampening the fabric of the girl's jacket. The sound she made was almost inaudible, but Aaron heard it. He stood a few feet away, hands hanging at his sides, unsure what to do with them. His own eyes stung. He blinked hard. The fire burned in the hearth contained behind glass. Its light lit the side of Cassandra's face, and Ruby's hair, and the line of Aaron's shoulders. On the table between them lay the camera that had tried to turn their night into a scandal, dark and silent, next to the tag that had tied them together long before snow and headlines and boardrooms had anything to do with it. Morning came in layers. First it was the gray light behind the curtains, soft and hesitant. Then the distant sound of a plow on the lane scraping metal on packed snow. Finally, the faint chime of a phone vibrating on a table. Ruby woke first. She was on the couch where she had fallen asleep, blanket tangled around her legs. For a second, she did not know where she was. The ceiling was too high, the air too still. Then she saw the tree half dressed in glass and silver, and remembered. Her father was slumped in an armchair, chin tipped toward his chest, one hand resting on his knee. He still wore his work jacket open now. Cassandra was in the other chair, act straight, even in sleep he'd tilted against the wing of the chair, hair loose around her face. The phone buzzed again. It was on the side table near Cassandra's elbow screen, lighting up, then fading, then lighting again as more messages stacked. Ruby slid off the couch, the blanket pulling behind her. Her socks were warm against the polished floor. She picked up the phone and squinted at the screen. Lines of alerts filled it, missed calls, messages, subject lines from news outlets, business channels, names Ruby did not know. At the top, a notification preview showed part of a headline. Ice Queen's Christmas Scandal. She did not recognize the word scandal, but she knew the word Christmas. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Cassandra opened her eyes. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice was rough with sleep. Ruby jerked her hand back. "It kept buzzing," she said. "It woke up before you did." Cassandra pushed herself upright and reached for the phone. Her eyes were gritty, but the adrenaline came fast. She swiped through the notifications. A link from a financial news site, another from a local station, one from a gossip outlet that made her lip curl. She tapped the first. A photo loaded. Grainy shot through glass from outside. It showed the living room in her house. It showed her Aaron and Ruby. The caption beneath it read, "Exclusive CEO. Cassandra Hale spends Christmas Eve in secret mountain retreat with building maintenance worker and child." Ruby leaned closer. "That is here," she said. "That is us." Cassandra scrolled. More photos. The angle made everything look more intimate, less innocent. Her hand on the back of a chair near where Aaron stood. Aaron leaning toward her with a bowl in his hands. Ruby curled on the couch, blurred. Words marched under the images. Questions about judgment, about power, about the line between professional and personal. Her jaw tightened. Aaron stirred. He woke the way people did who did not get to sleep deeply, very often coming up fast. "What time is it?" he asked. "Too early for this," Cassandra said. She turned the phone so he could see. He took it from her. The headline jumped on the small screen. His face stared back at him from one of the photos, caught mid-gesture expression, unreadable. They had written a story without asking him a single question. The text around the pictures hinted at impropriety, at abuse of position, at secrets behind closed doors. His stomach dropped. Heat rose along his neck. Ruby watched his face. "Are we in trouble?" she asked. He did not answer right away. "This is going to hurt her," he said at last, looking at Cassandra, not the screen. "I should not be here. You should not be in a car hanging over a ravine either," she said. "Yet, here we are." Her phone buzzed in his hand. An incoming call flashed her lawyer's name. She took it back and answered. "Dana, tell me you have already seen it." Dana's voice came through, clipped and awake. "I am looking at it now," Cassandra said. "The board has too." Richard called an emergency session for this morning. Lauren has been forwarding links, like she thinks I do not see her doing it. They are nervous. They are using words like liability and reputation. Cassandra closed her eyes for a second. "How long do I have?" she asked. "Meeting is set for 10, Dana said. "You have until then to decide if you are going to let them drive this or if you are." "I will be there," Cassandra said, "with my own story." "Then you are going to want Miguel," Dana said, "and every camera your money has ever paid for." The line clicked off. Cassandra lowered the phone. "Aurora Dynamics wants to talk," she said. "About me being in your house, Aaron said. "About what it looks like," she said, "not what it is." He stood. His muscles complained stiff from the night in the chair. He moved anyway, crossing to where Ruby's boots and his own stood by the door. "We will get out of your way," he said. "You can tell them I took advantage. Blame me. It will be easier, cleaner." Ruby stared at him as if he had spoken another language. "You did not take advantage," she said. "You carried her up a hill in a blizzard." "They will not print that part," he said. Cassandra set the phone down on the table with more force than necessary. "You are not leaving," she said. "Ms. Hale," he began. "Cassandra," she said. Cassandra, he corrected slowly. If I stay, they use me to hurt you. You know that. They are already trying, she said. You walking out only gives them empty space to fill with whatever they want. I am not handing them that. He looked at her for a long moment. You do not owe me anything, he said. She met his gaze. I disagree, she said. She picked up her phone again and scrolled to a different contact. Miguel answered on the first ring. Hale, he said. I figured you would call before 9. How bad is it where you are? She asked. Couple of vans outside the office, he said. Couple more circling the block like sharks. Your front gate has a car parked just far enough away to pretend it is not watching. I met that one, Aaron said quietly. I want all of it, Cassandra said into the phone. Every minute of my driveway, my front yard, my living room for last night. Pull traffic cameras from the slope where I crashed if you can. Anything in the city nets that caught the skid. I want a timeline. Miguel whistled low. You planning to let me share with the board? He asked. I am planning to play it on the biggest screen in the building, she said. He laughed once, not unkindly. Yes, ma'am, he said. Send me the feeds from your estate system. I will patch them into ours and see what I can add. She ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Richard, she said when he picked up. Before you say anything, I am coming in. I expect everyone to be in the room when I arrive. We need an explanation, Cassandra, Richard said. His voice had the strained calm of a man trying to stay ahead of a story. You will get one, she replied. Do not try to solve this without me. She ended the call before he could respond. Aaron had stopped tying his boots. He was watching her with a different kind of focus now. You are really going to walk into that room with me, he said. I am really going to walk into that room with the truth, she said. You are part of it. Ruby pulled on her own boots, fingers moving quickly. Do I have to wear something nicer? She asked. Cassandra looked at her socks, one pink and one blue, peeking out from the tops of the boots. You look fine, she said. They moved through the house in an odd choreography, 3 people from different worlds sharing the same space. In the kitchen, Aaron produced their lighter grocery bag. I cannot take your food, Cassandra said when she saw it. You already did, Ruby said. We have soup in our bellies. Cassandra opened a cupboard and took down a box of granola bars. Then this is mine, she said, handing it to Ruby. And I say you are taking it home later. Ruby tucked the box into her jacket with exaggerated care. Outside, the storm had eased. Snow still fell, but in smaller flakes that drifted down instead of attacking sideways. Plows had carved paths along the lane. The air held the clean, sharp smell that came after a hard night. As they drove down toward the city in a sedan, Miguel had sent up. The SUV lay crooked against the trees on the slope half buried in snow. Emergency tape fluttered around it. No crews remained. It was a crime scene of physics now, nothing more. On the highway, Cassandra's phone buzzed with more alerts. She did not look at them. Instead, she watched the city grow larger in the windshield. From the back seat, Ruby peered out at the snow piled on median strips and overpasses. Why are they so loud when they are worried? She asked suddenly. Grown-ups. Aaron glanced back at her. Who, he asked. People on TV, she said, talking about Ms. Hale like they know her. Cassandra kept her eyes on the road ahead. They are paid to be loud, she said. It does not mean they are right. Downtown Aurora Dynamics rose in glass and steel, its name gleaming along the top floors. At street level, news vans had gathered at the curb. Their satellite dishes pointed at the gray sky. Cables snaked along the pavement. As the sedan pulled up, heads turned, cameras repositioned, microphones lifted. The driver looked at Cassandra in the rearview mirror. You can go around back, he said. She shook her head. No, she said. Front door? He stopped at the main entrance. Security had put up a rope line, but it would not hold back words. As soon as Cassandra stepped out, questions hit them. Ms. Hale, who is he? Is this your employee? Did you spend the night together? Is the company investigating? She felt them like small stones thrown in quick succession. She did not flinch. She did not answer. She simply walked, her coat closed, her chin level. Aaron got out on the other side with Ruby. He lifted her so her boots would not get soaked in the slush. Ruby wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder when someone pushed a microphone too close. Inside, the lobby felt brighter than usual. Phones glowed in employees' hands. Conversations dropped in volume when Cassandra passed. People stepped aside to make a clear path to the elevators. The doors closed behind them with a soft thud. The elevator hummed up. Ruby looked at their reflection in the brushed metal. A tall woman in a dark coat, a man in a work jacket, a girl in a scuffed purple jacket and boots dusted with snow. We look like 3 people who did not sleep enough, she said. That is accurate, Aaron answered. The 26th floor was quieter. The carpet absorbed sound. The reception desk outside the boardroom was manned by a woman who usually smiled. Today her face was careful. "They are all in there," she said. "Good," Cassandra replied. She pushed open the heavy door. The boardroom stretched long windows on one side showing the city under snow. A polished table ran almost the entire length. At the far end, a screen weighted black and reflective. Richard Lane sat near the center. His tie was a little crooked, as if he had dressed in a hurry. Other board members flanked him, some with tablets, some with printed copies of the article spread in front of them. Lauren sat a few chairs down from Richard in a navy suit, hair perfect, expression composed. In front of her, a tablet showed the same headline that had flashed on Cassandra's phone that morning. Cassandra did not sit. "You wanted an explanation," she said. "You are going to get more than that." Miguel stood by a small console near the corner. He gave a slight nod. Cassandra looked at Aaron and Ruby. "You stay," she said softly. "Both of you." Aaron hesitated, then took a seat near the end of the table, Ruby between him and the wall. Cassandra faced the board. "Last night," she said, "I left this building before the holiday party. I drove home alone. On the ridge road outside town, my car hit ice. It went over the guardrail. You can watch for yourself." She signaled to Miguel. He tapped a command. The screen at the end of the room flickered, then filled with an image from a traffic camera. Snow streaked in front of the shot. Headlights traced a curve. The dark shape of an SUV slid, spun, and struck the rail. Pixelated but clear enough. They watched the vehicle hang for a second, then tilt. Another figure appeared at the edge of the frame running. "That is, Mr. Miller," Cassandra said. "Your maintenance worker, you pay so little, I know exactly how much without checking." The video showed Aaron wrenching open the passenger door, hauling Cassandra's smaller frame out and away. A moment later, the SUV dropped crashing down the slope out of view. No one spoke. Miguel switched feeds. The state security footage came next, black and white high on the front gable of the house. It showed 3 figures trudging up the drive, snow heavy around them. One larger, steady, one smaller, trailing with a bag. One in the middle, leaning. "Here," Cassandra said. "Him carrying your scandal." Lauren shifted in her chair. The next angles came from closer cameras. The foyer, the hallway, the living room, each clip timed and dated. They saw soup being heated, bowls carried a child drawing. Nothing salacious, nothing close to what the headline had suggested. Then Miguel pulled up a different view, grainier, from outside. A man in a hooded jacket crept along the side of the house, lights pointed in at the lit windows. He lifted the camera, took shot after shot. Later, Aaron came into view, striding toward him through the snow, confronting him. "Your private investigator," Cassandra said, looking straight at Lauren. "Lauren's, to be accurate, paid with company funds that were labeled as security upgrades." Dana, seated near the end of the table with a file open, spoke for the first time. "We have copies of the invoices," she said, "and email chains authorizing them. None of them went through official channels." Lauren's hands tightened on her tablet. "I was concerned," she said, "for the company's reputation, for potential impropriety. I thought if something unseemly was happening, we needed documentation." "Unseemly," Cassandra repeated. "A man saving my life in a snowstorm. A child falling asleep on a couch because the roads were impassable. That is what you chose to frame as scandal." Richard cleared his throat. "The optics are bad," he said. "Shareholders are asking questions." "The optics look bad because someone chose a dirty lens," Cassandra said. "You have just seen the clean one." Silence stretched down the length of the table. On the screen, the last still image froze. It was one of the stolen photos. Through the grain in the glass, the 3 of them in the living room looked less like a secret and more like what they were, tired, cold people sharing warmth. Richard looked at Lauren. "Do you have any response to the misappropriation of funds?" he asked. Lauren's jaw set. "I acted in the best interest of Aurora Dynamics," she said. Dana slid a sheet of paper across the table to Richard. "The forensic team disagrees," she said. "There are discrepancies in the accounts tied to those payments, enough to warrant an external audit." Richard scanned the page, his mouth flattened. "We will need to vote," he said. The vote did not take long. Words like suspension and investigation moved around the table. Some voices were sharper than others. No one spoke in Lauren's defense. She sat very straight as Richard announced the decision. Her eyes skipped past Cassandra and landed on Aaron instead, as if he were the easier target to hate. When it was done, she gathered her tablet and left without a word. The door closed behind her in a soft click. Outside the boardroom, in homes and offices and on phones, the story that had started the morning a certain way began to twist. New clips from the traffic camera leaked. Words like hero and rescue slid into headlines. The same photos looked different when paired with a different line of text. In the boardroom, the screen went black. Cassandra turned away from the table at last. Some of the directors murmured apologies. Some spoke of miscommunication, of being misled. She nodded once, not trusting herself to answer any of it. Her gaze found Aaron and Ruby at the far end of the room. Ruby sat with her feet not quite touching the floor, swinging them in small arcs. Aaron's work jacket looked out of place against the polished wood and glass. His hands were folded together so tightly the knuckles were pale. "You do not belong in this room," he said quietly when she reached them. "Neither do half the people at that table," she replied. "But we are here anyway." Ruby looked up at her. "Did we do something wrong?" she asked. Cassandra shook her head. "You did everything right," she said. She glanced at Aaron. "So did you," she added. There was no press, no cameras inside this room, no headlines scrolling along the bottom of the wall, just the steady sound of the building around them, and the snow still falling beyond the glass. The boardroom emptied in pieces. Chairs slid back, papers gathered into neat stacks. Tablets slipped into leather cases. No one wanted to be the first out the door, but no one wanted to linger either. Richard muttered something about investor calls and left with 2 other directors in his wake. A few board members paused near Cassandra, offering thin phrases that sounded like apologies and damage control at the same time. She acknowledged them with slight nods. Miguel disconnected the feed, coiled a cable with practice movements, and caught Cassandra's eye once more. "We are clean on our side," he said quietly. "The rest is noise." "Thank you," she said. He gave a small shrug, almost a bow, and left. Dana slid her papers into a folder, snapped it closed, and stepped closer. "I will handle the external statements," she said. "You are on script if you stick to what we just showed them." "I intend to," Cassandra said. Dana's gaze flicked to Aaron and Ruby, then back. "They make a better picture than anything that ran this morning," she said. "Try not to let anyone ruin that." She squeezed Cassandra's shoulder once, and left the room, heels whispering on the carpet. The door closed. The space felt larger with only 3 people in it. Aaron exhaled slowly. It came out as a faint sound between his teeth. Ruby's feet finally stopped swinging. She slid off the chair and stood up, hands smoothing the front of her jacket, as if she expected someone to check her outfit. "Do we go home now?" she asked. Eventually, Aaron said. Cassandra looked at the wall of windows. The city sprawled below streets lined in slush and piled snow. The clouds had begun to lift, revealing a pale strip of sky over the distant foothills. "Come on," she said. "I am done staring at this table." She led them out into the hallway. Out here, the air felt less heavy. Floor-to-ceiling glass lined one side, the offices and conference rooms on the other. The building hummed quietly around them, fans and elevators and the low murmur of distant voices. Cassandra stopped near a wide section of glass. From here, the view went farther over the tops of lower buildings to the highway that snaked away toward the hills. Ruby went straight to the window, pressing her fingertips lightly to the cold surface. "We are very high up," she said. "That we are," Aaron replied. "You okay?" he asked Cassandra after a moment. She let the question hang, then answered. "Considering half the financial press spent breakfast dissecting my personal life, she said better than I expected." Her reflection looked back at her from the glass, faint and superimposed over the city. Aaron's reflection stood a little behind hers. Ruby's head just reached the level of their elbows. "You looked like you belonged in there," Aaron said. "That is literally the job description," she said. He shook his head once. "I mean, you did not flinch," he said, "even when they were already decided." Her mouth curved. "I have spent a lot of time in rooms where people think they know what I'm going to do," she said. "It is a small pleasure to surprise them." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The lanyard with his badge hung against his chest. The operations letters faded but still readable. "I still do not belong in that room," he said. "Maybe not as a suspect," she said, "but there is another chair at that table that needs someone who understands how this building actually works." He frowned, not following. She turned from the window to face him fully. "You were studying mechanical systems before you left school," she said. "You have been making old equipment behave with duct tape and patience for years. You diagnosed and fixed a generator you had never seen in under 20 minutes in the dark." He shifted again, uncomfortable under the focus. "Maintenance is my job," he said. "Maintenance is the title you have," she said. "It is not the measure of what you can do." He looked past her at the far end of the hall, where a pair of junior executives hurried out of an office, heads bowed over a tablet. Their voices faded as they turned the corner. "Without a degree, you do not get invited to sit at that table," he said. "Degrees open doors," she said. "So, do people in charge of those doors?" She took a breath. "I want you to run mechanical systems here," she said. "Not just boilers in the basement. Everything. Elevators, climate control, generators, fail-safes. The infrastructure no one notices until it stops. He stared at her. Ruby turned from the window, sensing something in the air. Like a boss, Ruby asked. Like a department head, Cassandra said. We would call it Director of Mechanical Systems. Training team budget. We would backdate credit for the work you have already done to keep this place from falling apart. Aaron let out a soft, incredulous sound. You barely know me, he said. I know you went into a burning building when you were 14 because you heard someone crying, she said. I know you ran toward a car while everyone else pushed on the brake and hoped someone else would help. I know you fix things that are breaking even when no one is looking. She tipped her head slightly. And I know what your file says, she added. I asked for it this morning while Miguel pulled the footage. He flinched a little at that. What else does it say, he asked. That you took night classes in engineering until your wife left, she said. That you dropped out to work full-time. That you are the one the other techs call when the schematics make no sense. He looked down at his hands. The knuckles were still rough from years of wrenching and lifting. A faint line of grease hid at the base of one thumbnail, the kind that dug in and refused to wash out entirely. Cassandra, he said, slowly trying the name as if it were as strange as the offer people like me do not get those titles. There are not people like you, she said. There is you. Ruby watched his face. Do you want it? She asked. He did not answer right away. He looked past Cassandra through the glass to where the highway led away toward the hills and the small rented duplex buried in white. A life of timed shifts and overdue notices and boilers that clanged like complaints. If I say yes, he said, I am not sure I know how to be that person. You already are, she said. We would just be paying you properly to do it. The directness of that landed. He let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. What about Ruby, he asked. The hours, the expectations. I cannot put this place ahead of her. Good, Cassandra said. We do not need another executive who thinks this building is the center of the universe. She glanced at Ruby. She is the one who dragged you up a hill for me last night, she said. I would like to keep both of you alive and functioning. That means we find a way that works. Ruby rested her forehead briefly against the glass. A patch of fog bloomed there, then faded. I could do homework here, she suggested. In the lobby, there are comfortable chairs. Aaron almost laughed. I am not bringing my kid to work every night, he said. You might not have to, Cassandra said. But when you do, there is space. There are spare offices. There is a cafeteria with questionable pizza. We can work with that. He looked at her again. This is too much, he said, after one night. It was not one night, she said. It was 20 years of both of us carrying pieces of the same fire without knowing it. And then one night when I finally saw all the ways we have already been working for the same building, just on different floors. Ruby tugged at his sleeve. Dad, she said, if you fix more important stuff, does that mean less people will yell at the boilers? I cannot make that promise, he said. People always yell at boilers. She smiled. But you would be in charge of the yelling, she said. He rubbed a hand over his face. If I say yes, he asked Cassandra and I mess it up. Then you learn, she said, like the rest of us. Their reflections stood together in the glass. 3 shapes in a row, the letters on his badge, small but visible. He looked at his own reflection for a moment longer and then nodded once. Good, she said. HR will hate the paperwork, but they will survive. Something eased in her shoulders, a tension he had not noticed until it shifted. Which brings us to the less glamorous part, she added. You cannot go back to your apartment yet. He frowned. Why not? Because your face has been on half the news sites in this city since dawn, she said. Reporters are probably sitting on your front steps by now. They will not be polite. He imagined strangers with cameras outside their building. The narrow hallway with its peeling paint. The door that did not always latch on the first try. Ruby trying to slide past men she did not know to get to bed. His jaw tightened. You stay at the house, Cassandra said. At mine, for now. Until the noise dies down. There are more than enough rooms. The gate actually works. Miguel will make sure whoever is sitting on the road keeps their distance. Aaron opened his mouth, then closed it. And before you argue about charity, she said, consider that you are doing me a favor. That place is too big and too empty when the power is on, and the only thing you hear is your own footsteps. Ruby turned her head from the window. You want us to live there? She asked. For a while, Cassandra said. Long enough to figure out what comes after today. Long enough for your dad to schedule some meetings without worrying someone is banging on his front door with a microphone. Ruby looked at Aaron. Do we get to finish decorating the tree? She asked. He met Cassandra's eyes. There was no pity there, No sense of doing him a kindness to make herself feel better. Only a steady, almost stubborn intention. We would not want to leave it half done, Cassandra said. Ruby grinned, already picturing glass ornaments and untangled lights. Aaron felt a knot in his chest loosen by a fraction. Then I guess he said quietly, "We have a place to be for a bit." Cassandra nodded once. "Good," she said. "Let us start with that." Christmas morning arrived quiet and bright. Snow lay clean over the hills, covering last night's tracks and the day before that. Sunlight caught on the drifted edges along the Hale driveway and on the bare branches of the trees, turning them into fine lines of light. Inside the house sounded different than it had a year ago. Some of that was simple noise, laughter from the kitchen, low music from a speaker someone had remembered to turn on, cupboard doors opening and closing without trying to be quiet. The rest was harder to name. Ruby sat cross-legged on the rug in front of the living room fireplace, holding a paper star up at arm's length. "Higher," she said. Aaron stood by the tree with one arm stretched as far as it would go. The star listed sideways in his hand, its points cut from heavy card and covered in glitter that had already migrated to his shirt. "If I go any higher," he said, "I will need a crane." "I can get you a chair," she offered. "We tried the chair," he said. "The chair betrayed us." Cassandra walked in carrying a tray of cinnamon rolls, steam still curling from their icing. She wore a soft gray sweater and jeans, feet bare on the wood. Her hair was loose, curling a little from the warmth in the room. She took in the scene. "Problem?" she asked. "He is too short," Ruby said. "DSDC." Sa. Aaron looked over his shoulder at her. "Mutiny," he said, "in my own crew." Cassandra set the tray on the coffee table and picked up the small step stool leaning against the wall. "Try this," she said. He took it, set it carefully on the rug, and stepped up. The extra height put him just above the top spike of the tree. "Now," Ruby said, handing up the star. He fixed it onto the highest branch, adjusting until it held steady and straight. When he stepped back down, they all looked at it in the same moment. Light from the window behind the tree caught the glitter. Tiny spots of brightness sprinkled the ceiling. Ruby made a pleased noise in her throat. "Official," she said. "Tree complete." Last year, the tree had stood half-dressed for weeks. This year, someone had started early. There were glass balls and handmade ornaments and strands of lights that all worked. Near the middle, a small fire truck Ruby had put together from bits of metal and plastic sat on a branch wheel slightly uneven. By the fireplace on the mantel, the dog tag that had once hung on a hook in a cramped duplex now lay in a small frame. The letters were the same, but the way they sat in the room had changed. A school photo of Ruby leaned against the frame corners, tucked in to keep it in place. The fire in the hearth burned behind the glass, steady and contained. Cassandra moved closer to it without hesitation now. She knelt to adjust a log with the iron tool, feeling the warmth on her wrists. Her hand brushed the chain at her neck when she stood. The new necklace was silver, the pendant small and flat. The words engraved on it were simple. "For the girl from the fire, for the woman who brought me back." She had not taken it off since he had fastened it there, that morning, fingers a little clumsy with nerves. The kitchen timer beeped faintly down the hall. "I will get it," Aaron said. He disappeared toward the smell of coffee and baking. Ruby watched him go, then flopped onto her stomach on the rug and opened a book she had been working through, pencil marking notes in the margins. Cassandra sat on the couch and watched her for a moment. "How is school?" she asked. "Good," Ruby said, not looking up. "My science teacher says I ask too many questions. Then he says there is no such thing. I think he is confused." "You like it there?" Ruby shrugged one shoulder, but there was no reluctance in it. "They have a lab," she said, "and a robotics club. We are building a little machine that follows a line on the floor. It is slow, but it does not give up." Cassandra smiled. "That sounds familiar," she said. Aaron came back with a plate and 3 mugs. The smell of coffee wrapped around the room, chasing the last of the morning chill away. He handed Ruby a mug of hot chocolate and set the coffee within reach of Cassandra. When he sat beside her, the couch dipped a little. Their shoulders brushed. On the television mounted above a sideboard, the volume was turned low. A news program flashed shots of airports' crowded living rooms, a montage of the usual holiday scenes. Briefly, a photo of Aaron from the day at the boardroom appeared in a corner graphic. The caption at the bottom read, "Maintenance worker who saved CEO now leads new infrastructure program at Aurora Dynamics." Ruby glanced up at it. "You are on TV again," she said. Aaron followed her gaze. The younger version of his face from a year ago looked strained, the angles sharper. "They can talk about the building instead," he said. "That would be an improvement." "It does," Cassandra said. "You just are in the headlines sometimes." He reached for one of the cinnamon rolls. The icing stuck briefly to his fingers. He handed one to Ruby, then another to Cassandra. "Thank you," she said. "You made them," he pointed out. "You heated the oven," she replied. "We are even." Snow drifted past the windows in slow, unhurried lines. Not the hard, sideways storm of that night, just a quiet fall that blurred the view of the driveway and softened the edges of the world outside. Ruby tugged at something under the tree and pulled out a small box wrapped in plain brown paper tied with kitchen twine. Her name was written on the top in Aaron's careful block letters. "Can I?" she asked. Aaron nodded. She unwrapped it with more patience than her expression suggested. Inside was a small toolkit, the kind sized for hands like hers. The handles were bright yellow. Each piece had a slot in the molded tray. Her face lit up. "You have your own tools now," Aaron said. "You can stop stealing mine." "I do not steal them," she said. "I borrow them for an extended period." Cassandra watched Ruby pull each tool out in turn, test the weight, slide it back. There were other packages under the tree, some in glossy paper, some in reused boxes. They would get to them. There was time. For the moment, the three of them sat within the circle of light from the fire and the tree. The rest of the house held their weight differently than it had the year before. It no longer felt like a shell waiting for footsteps. It knew their patterns now, the way they moved from kitchen to hall to living room, the way voices carried and settled. Later in the day, there would be calls. Richard checking in with a tone that tried to be informal. Miguel sending a picture of his family by their own tree. Dana texting a link to an article that focused on policy changes and new systems rather than rumors. For now, there was only the sound of Ruby explaining to Cassandra how the line-following robot worked, using her new tools to draw imaginary circuits in the air, and the way Cassandra listened, as if there was nothing else she needed to be doing. Aaron leaned back into the couch cushions. His hand rested on the back of the couch behind Cassandra's shoulder, not quite touching, but close enough that he could feel the heat of her there. He glanced at the mantel where the framed dog tag sat. The metal caught a bit of the fire's light. Beseemed at the small fire truck ornament on the tree turned gently in a draft from the heating vent. The memory of sirens and falling ceilings would never leave him completely. The shape of that night was carved into him. It lived in the scar on Cassandra's wrist and in the name on the tag. But here in this room, the sound of a different engine filled the air. The low, even hum of a furnace that worked. The soft rush of air through vents. Systems he now understood, from rooftop to basement systems he was responsible for keeping alive. "Dad," Ruby said. He looked over. "Next year," she said, "can we build something that hangs on the tree together? All three of us." Cassandra's eyes met his. "We can do that," he said. Ruby nodded, satisfied, and went back to her book. Outside, more snow began to fall, soft and sure. Inside, the fire kept burning, not as threat or memory, but as a piece of the life they were still learning how to live. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.